This is Dr. Irene of Dr. Irene's Nutrition Tidbits. Today I'm going to share a simple recipe for a basic challah recipe. Challah is known as egg bread. In this case, it only contains 2 eggs, but a really rich bread would contain about 2 eggs plus 4 additional egg yolks for 2 small loaves. In this case, I'm using my handy-dandy bread maker. You don't need a bread maker to make bread, but I just find it simplifies the process because every single Friday I make bread for our Friday night dinner. And to me, I like an easy way I can throw it in and then just be working on dinner. But I take it out once it's mixed. I personally don't care for the drier texture when it's baked in my bread maker. And I like to form the loaves into more of a traditional braided loaf or sometimes a square loaf or round loaf. So I take the bread out. The reason I love the bread maker is that it's so easy, but there is one most important thing you have to remember. You always have to keep the yeast away from the salt. I use an instant yeast so that I can take it out, let it rise one time, and then throw it in the oven. If you're using a yeast that is a regular yeast, you have to let it rise once, punch it down, and then form your loaf and let it rise again. Because I'm using the quick acting, I'll be able to throw my challah out of the bread maker onto a pan, let it rise, and when it's double in size, I can throw it in the oven. So I put in my yeast, and in this case, I used approximately 2 tablespoons of the rapid yeast to 4 cups of flour. Again, I always make 2 loaves, usually to either take to a neighbor or to, because I'm having a lot of people for dinner. So I put my 2 cups of flour in. And for the rest, I really don't worry about the order. I'm going to next put in my 1/4 cup of honey. You can use sugar as well. My family will be a little amazed because they know I never measure anything. So every week they're saying, "This challah is good, can you do it again?" And I'll say no, because I just throw it together and I can just tell by the texture, but it will taste a little different each time. I know some people like recipes, so actually this is unique, and then I'm using an actual recipe. The recipe calls for 2 eggs, which I've already cracked and I will throw in. And it called for 1/2 cup of oil and 1/2 cup of water. That's why this recipe is easy. 4 cups of flour, 1/2 cup of honey, 1/2 cup of oil, 1/2 cup of water. And for some people, they put in the optional salt. In my case, I happen to like the salt and usually add it. It calls for 1 teaspoon of salt. My bread maker's about 10 years old, so I have to watch it just to make sure it gets started. And this is where I add a little bit of this, I add a little bit of that. If the dough is too sticky, because the recipe calls to 4 to 5 cups of flour, too sticky, then I would add a little bit more of the flour because I only started with the 4 cups. And if it's too dry, I want to add some water. I'm highly suspicious of this recipe only asking for 1/2 cup of water, because usually I can just tell I use a little bit more water, so I'll have my water ready to add it. So as it begins to mix, I just watch it, and if it's starting to clump together in a ball too soon and it looks like it's going to stiff, I even stop it before it goes too far so that I can add a little bit of water. Again, this takes some practice. Some of you may be new to bread making. Other of you may have a better sense of what you want it to feel like. But I really like the bread to be a tiny bit on the sticky side as it starts to mix, and then the flour gradually absorbs it. I like to be able to barely get it out of the bread maker and put it in a shape without it sticking to my fingers. That way I get a challah that's not too dry. I'm showing you now what my challah looks like when it's at a stickiness that I really like. If I would even poke it, I can feel that my hands make an indent, but it's not sticking to it. That to me is about perfect, and I'll just let it run until the bread maker decides it's mixed it adequately. I've just taken the bread out of the bread maker, and it's the perfect texture. It's still very, very pliable, very soft. It's going to make a really nice challah. I want 2 loaves. I could make 1 large loaf, but I'm going to do a quick slice down the center. And in this case, I'm really going to take the easy route and make just a long bread versus trying the braiding today. So that you can see what I'm doing, I am moving the camera so that it will hopefully not fall again. Now some people will do, after it's risen, an egg wash of just a beaten egg, and they'll put some poppy seed or some sesame seed if they want it to look a little fancy. But for now, I'm just going to leave it in a warm place. Ideal would be about 100 degrees, a little bit warmer than an extremely hot kitchen in the summer. So sometimes I'll put my oven, which has a baked bread feature. Other times it's warm enough in my kitchen, it will just rise in about an hour and a half till double in size. Initially, when I took the bread out and cut it in half, I had put parchment paper on. But then I remembered my silicone sheets, which I do just love. That way I can just reuse them. And so I've now taken the bread and laid it down to rise on my silicone baking sheets. That makes just an easy cleanup. I've just checked on the challah, and as you can tell, it's double in size. So it's time to put it in the oven. At this point, I could put an egg wash on of just a beaten egg, and I could sprinkle it with sesame seeds or poppy seeds, or just plain if you want a glossy look. I've decided to just keep mine plain. I just took the bread out of the oven after it was 25 minutes, and it was about 350. I like it just golden brown, and I can just tell by tapping on it that it is cooked inside. So there we go for an easy bread recipe. Bon appetit!